This episode is proudly supported by Westholme Australian Wagyu. Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and the Northern Territory, Australia, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. They steward 16 million acres of rangeland, guided by the natural ecosystem where cattle graze and forage on native grasses for the first few years of their lives. The result is high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia. Westholme believe that when nature leads, flavour follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
It's just food. It's a bit of an obsession, right? I don't know what it is. It's always changing. It's never the same. You know, we strive for perfection or whatever, but we're never going to get it.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. In this economic downturn, certain decisions need to be made, not only for the good of your own livelihood, but to help businesses too. This can manifest in many ways. So how do you navigate tricky times and continue to build your career path? Josh Smith-Thirkell is the executive chef of the QT in Canberra. Josh, how are you?
Good, mate. Good. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to get you on the show. Seen you around town a lot these days, and you're back at QT. What's it like back there?
Yeah, look, I went off and had a bit of fun for a few years, and now I've come, what they're saying, I've come home, back to the QT family, QT life. It's good. It's nice to be in a big, I think my passion for kitchens is big kitchens, big operations. So it's nice to be back in something as big as this, which is good.
You were looking after sort of numerous venues with the guys from Gather, Fixate Hospitality. Tell us about the difficult decision to sort of leave there and go back to the QT.
Well, yeah, look, we did some great things there. We opened up a few little restaurants and a few little venues, and it was a very enjoyable few years with the boys, and, I learned a lot. Hopefully, they taught me a lot. Hopefully I taught them a lot, but when I looked at what I wanted to do for the future, especially how the climate is right now, it was sort of hotels. And I'm lucky enough that at QT, it's not just a hotel restaurant, where we try to go really big and vibrant and do big flavors and good menus and really high-end stuff. So it was good to come home to that sort of thing.
Yeah, you're doing amazing things there at the Capital Bar and Grill. Tell us a little bit about the restaurant and the meat aging program, the things that you're doing there.
Yeah, so when I came back, I changed the menu just a few months ago, just to launch, obviously, with winter. And I put a bit of my spin back onto what I think Capital Bar and Grill is and should be. It's a bit of a Italian New York bar and grill. So pretty prominent Italian influence in there. But then it's got, your Rockpool-esque sort of steak program. We dry age all our own beef. We source it from Cape Grim, so down in Tasmania. What else? Beautiful pastas. We get pasta fresh from Fabrica out of Sydney. All our salumis, our LPs. It's just the best. All our bread's fresh every day from Sonoma. And it's accessible. It's at a decent price point. It's inviting. It's very homely. It's sort of a place where if you're traveling for work, you can come for dinner and you feel like you're at home. There's no pretentiousness or anything like that. It's just very honest, hearty, good quality food.
A couple of years ago when COVID landed, hotels were impacted just as badly as restaurants. You had a double whammy of hotel and restaurant. How different is now compared to sort of then?
It's good to have a busy hotel because it's very, like, during COVID, I was lucky enough, to stay on, and because, we were deemed as, high risk, or, people had to travel, essential travel, so we had to stay open and give them a service. So I was lucky enough to stay here during winter, but when you've got a hotel this big, it's 220 rooms, 16 stories high, and there's only 4 people in the building, it's a little bit spooky, I'll tell you that. But now, well, it's school holidays as we're talking right now. The car parks are packed. There's hundreds of people in the hotel. The restaurant's busy, breakfast and dinner every night. There's conferencing going on. It's like a whole nother atmosphere and world. It's just incredible. It makes you feel very thankful. That's what I say.
The food in restaurants, and so the restaurants in hotels, I should say, have changed so much over the years. And you're sort of leading the way in the capital with what you do there in a hotel dining. Tell us a little bit about sort of what you need to do, because you've got room service, you've got events, you've got the restaurant as well. How do you manage all those things and get the food right?
You have a team of very, very strong sous chefs. That's the first key. Without them, you've got nothing. And I learned that the hard way a few years ago, don't get me wrong. But yeah, we have separate chefs in charge of separate departments, and it's very organised. There's lots of meetings. There's lots of online systems. There's lots, we've got a storeman, we've got, cleaners, we've got everything. The operation is just absolutely huge because, breakfast, lunch, dinner, room service, all of it. There's times here where we'll feed 1,000 people over a Friday. And in hotel worlds, that's actually not even that busy, if you look at some of the other big boys out there. But it's all just that we've got a solid team here, mate. Some of the people that have been here for years. They know what to do. It's like the back of their hands. But, it's just a good quality crew of people, and it's not trying to do it all yourself. You need to have a good team of people around you to support you and, and for you to support them and to build the reins of the, the hierarchy.
In a little while, I want to talk about your love of sort of finding great produce and that's how you start sort of with your food and your dishes. But take us back to when you were young. Whereabouts did you grow up, and what sort of role did food play?
I'm a bit of a mixed breed. I grew up in Brisbane till I was about 13, and then I spent most summer holidays in New Zealand with my grandfather. And then when I was about 14, 15, I moved to Tasmania. Finished my apprenticeship down there, and then I travelled on after that through QT land. But when I was young, one of the first things I remember that, I was a bit of a handful as a child, I might say. But my grandmother was she was a cookery teacher in a special needs school. Sorry, I don't know the official term off the top of my head, sorry. And my uncle was a chef as well. So when I go and see my grandparents and my father and that, we'd have a great meals. And if I said to Ned, I'm hungry, she'd chuck me a jar of olives filled with anchovies for a 7-year-old, I remember eating pate by the tub when I was 8, and then I found out what was in it when I was like 13, and I had a tantrum, and I got told to, suck it up pretty quickly. So growing up, I had some pretty strong flavours come to me straight away, like the summer holidays in New Zealand, catching snapper, oysters. It was the northern around the Coromandel, so mussels for days. You could buy them in a sack on the side of the road for $10. You get 10 kilos, it was just insane. So, a bit of flour, lemon on the barbecue. Everything was on a barbecue in New Zealand. Nothing's anything else. It's all on a barbecue. But, fresh snapper, fresh oysters, fresh mussels. And I think that's sort of made my love for seafood still stay all these years, this 30 years later, I suppose.
Extraordinary. What was it like in Tasmania when you first got your foot in the door and were you doing your apprenticeship?
Tassie's the best place in the world, in my opinion, and it's just incredible. That's probably why I like Canberra so much, because it's so similar to Tassie. I moved down there. Some family stuff happened, and I moved down there about 14, 15, and I was in 8 months into a cooking apprenticeship. I was 15. I left school at 15. I left school. And I did my apprenticeship at Barnbougle Dunes. I don't know if you know, it's a golf course down in Bridport, just in the northeast of Tasmania. I think it's one of the best in Australia, public access. It's just the most beautiful spot ever. But I learned it was like an old pub sort of thing. Very busy, lots of men, lots of red wine, lots of golf. I learned there, and then when I finished my apprenticeship, I wanted to travel, but I got a job at Ninth Island, Piper's Brook, Craiglinger. Vineyard, and I did a bit of work out there as well, and that brought in the Tassie wine as well. So I started to learn more about wine, more about all the seafood down there, more about the Cape Grim beef and all that sort of stuff, and that really sort of started to help me, got the fire in me.
What is it about Tasmania and its produce that you love?
It sort of takes, it's when you get off the plane in Tassie, it sounds weird, but the air smells different. I don't know if it's the I don't know, the farmlands and the manure or whatever that's drifts across the airports or whatever, but it it has a different smell down there, and it's just everything just seems cleaner. It just seems fresher, cleaner. The people down there that you meet that do make these produce, whether they're doing cheese, whether they're diving for abalones or crayfish, or they're farmers, or they just have a different way about them. It's just so much care and love put into everything that comes out of that town. And the beautiful thing is that almost everyone in Tassie, because it's such a small community, there'll be signs where you'll drive past a cheese farm and they'll have a sign on the road that says, "We're milking today, come in and say hello." And you can just walk into this goat cheesery that's they're literally milking their goats. You just walk in and say hello. I remember doing that a few times next to where I lived. There was a little farm and it was incredible. I think it's like Sally Wise, the baker from down in Hobart. When she bakes at her house, she has a sign out the front that says, "I'm baking today, come say hello." She's one of the best chefs in Australia. Like, who does that, Tasmanians do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. As you started to build your career, what were the sort of really important people that you worked with, and what influence did they have on you?
When I was in Tassie and when I was about to sort of embark on my journey, I was working for an old chef called Di Turner, and she had 6 kids, and she sort of took me under her wing for a few years as well, and sort of treated me like one of her, extra kids, I'd say, and helped me out a lot, and sort of pushed me to leave. And then when I left Tasmania, it's funny. I was actually going to go and become a winemaker. I was going to do a stint in Falls Creek to do a snow season, and then I was going to go to McLaren Vale and go to school and study viticulture. But anyway, those 4 months in the snow, I started with QT and we opened QT Falls Creek, and I was a commie chef, mate. I was like 19 or 20. And I met a chef called Nick Wood, and he sort of made me realise in 4 months that I was a good chef, or I had something, and he convinced me to get transferred to Sydney, QT Sydney at Gowings. Then it was under Paul Eason from and Nicola, I can't remember his last name, Chichia, I can't pronounce it, and they were the exec chef and sous chef, and Rob Marchetti was the creative guy. And this young Tassie boy who's never been to Sydney, before, then moved to Sydney and walks into a hatted QT Sydney. And if you know it, it's a very flamboyant, extravagant, huge, it's almost like a theatre sort of hotel. And a young, 20-year-old Tassie boy who's never been to Sydney before gets a job there. I was shitting bricks for weeks, mate.
Take us back to that time. What was life like? Not just the kitchen, but what was it like for you to live in Sydney, having sort of your experiences in Tasmania before that?
It was an eye-opener. It was incredible. I went to work, I put my head down, I had my notebook. I used to draw photos of how the section was set up so every day I could get it right, because I was so scared to make a mistake. There was just so many people to meet, so many dishes to learn, all this stuff that it just was completely overwhelming, but I couldn't let that, get to me. So I just put my head down, and, on my days off, I was only a commie chef, living in King's Cross with a girlfriend at the time. And I used to get my Opal card and travel around Sydney to different places and go look in the doors of restaurants and shops. And because I'd never been to Manly, I'd never been to Newtown, I'd never been anywhere. And I just used to explore the city on my days off. My favourite thing to do on my day off was go to the Sussex Street food court in Haymarket, and I think it was Happy Chef, and get a bowl of laksa, and it was like $9, and it was like enough to feed a family of 4.
You mentioned that you've weaved your way through the QT over your career. Tell us about that journey and sort of the steps that you made.
I sort of, when I have I'll go through sort of where I've been, but when I started my career, I was young there in Sydney, sort of getting it done. And I got offered a lot of positions quite quickly over a few years that I said yes to, because I was not a no man. I was a yes man. If you need me, this, yes, chef, no worries. Yep, you want to move? Yes, chef. You just don't say no. That was the mentality. But I traveled around a lot, and a lot of the other chefs that I was working with at that time, I'm still friends with. They sort of stayed in the the low hierarchy, coming to CDP, sort of junior sous areas, and they've just gone through restaurants all through Sydney, and they've learned so much more about technique of cookery and all that sort of stuff. But I went sort of up execs, sous chef exec pretty quickly. And I learned the opposite end. I learned about, management, payroll, structure, leadership, that sort of thing. And that's the sort of direction that I chose to take my career on. Because there was one day I was at Gowings and Paul turned to me and goes, "Do you want to go to Canberra? They opened a new hotel. They need chefs." And I was like, "Yeah, no worries." And he's like, "How long, chef?" And he was like, 2 weeks. So the next day I was on a plane to Canberra. And, knife roll, not many clothes. 2 weeks turned into 2 months. And then in the last week, I got offered a sous chef job here. So I said, "Yep, no worries." And they said, "You got to go back and, train someone to do your section in Sydney." So it's no worries. Moved down to Canberra, packed up my life, came down to Canberra. And then about 18 months later, got a call as well for the winter in Falls Creek. "Hey, do you think Josh is ready to go down and be an exec at Falls Creek?" So we used to have a little, 40-room, high-end hotel right at the bottom of the main chairlift in Falls Creek. So I said, "Yep." I went down there. That was, must have been 25. That was my first exec chef role in a snow season in Australia. If for those who have done a snow season in their early 20s know what it's like, it's pretty they're pretty crazy. I think I had 3 days off in 4 months. It was just a beast, It was no room service, but breakfast, dinner, a bar that operated 12 hours a day. It was just a behemoth, and getting deliveries was hard because you're on a mountain and you get a blizzard and you get no power, and it was very hard one to navigate being at a young age. But I had a very supportive general manager and culinary director who helped me out through it, which was good. And then at the end of the season, they're like, "What are you going to do, Josh?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure." And they're like, "How do you feel about going to Queenstown?" And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "New Zealand." And I was like, "Yes." So they said, "When do you want me there?" They said 7 days. And I was like, "Oh, shit, yep." So, and then I moved to Queenstown and I opened up that hotel, which was fantastic.
It's an extraordinary city, Queenstown. Well, just visually, the water colour is stunning and the mountains and everything. What was it like for you there?
Oh, okay. Besides Tasmania, Queenstown's the second best place in the world. It is absolutely incredible, mate. That town is just like, you still to this day, you pinch yourself when you wake up and drove to work because you're like, this can't be real. It's like a postcard, I was very lucky to be able to open a property, and I learnt all about that. I was exec chef for the first 9 months, and then after that, I actually was F&B director for a year and a half, which was a little bit different. But Queenstown is it's a beautiful place. It has incredible produce as well. Like, people just think because it snows there, you can't get anything, but you can get everything there. It's amazing. But it's very hard to run businesses there. And I think the city has been just destroyed over COVID, coming out of COVID, and then with the staffing shortage and the way the real estate is in that town. I reckon that, mate, 70% of my job in Queenstown was recruitment, because that's how many people you go through. And then, there's a visa. I can't remember what it is, but it's like you only work for a year on a tourist visa, and then you got to get sponsorship. So it's a lot of processes, and you can't lock good staff in for years unless they're Australian or New Zealand or have PR. So just a lot of training, a lot of recruitment.
What did you learn about opening up a hotel restaurant?
It doesn't always go to plan. It's difficult opening somewhere that's classified as a little bit out of the way, a little bit rural. Like, for those who've been to Queensland, it's not a big town. It's not like Sydney. It's half the size of Canberra, sort of thing. And when you don't have these big supplies around you and you're a bit, remote, it makes things very, very difficult. And you learn not to take things for granted when you live in a big city. It was the first, I think, 6 months I was there. I spent 3 months just setting up, organising, writing menus, that sort of stuff. And that was time well spent. But I swear that, 90% of the work that goes into opening a place happens in the last week, because just when all hands on deck. We were quite lucky that we got to split the hotel opening and the restaurant and bar opening by a couple of months, which made our lives a lot easier. And, the way that QT was back then, they were sort of, Queenstown was back then, they were just sort of stepping their way into like good restaurants and good bars and, well, that next level. Like, they've always got good stuff, to get me wrong, but it was like the next level. And we were sort of on that verge of that as well. So when we opened up, we got really busy, we got really popular, we had lots of events and partnerships come through. So it was a really good, year and a half there, which was fantastic.
What brought you back to Canberra?
I think, as I said, I did F&B director over there for about a year and a half, and then I got a phone call from Rob Marchetti, who said, "Josh, we need an exec chef in Canberra. How do you reckon you're up for, to come back and take on that role?" And I said yes straight away, without even thinking about it. Because Canberra, when you're in your 20s and you're traveling around working, especially as a chef, it's very hard to find friends when you're this age, and acquaintances and people that, especially if you don't grow up in these towns, to have a beer with after work that don't work with you. And when I was here the first time, I made quite a few friends outside of that. So Canberra was a bit like a second home. So to get offered a huge role back somewhere that's almost like your second home I couldn't say no, and it was nice to come back to Australia, to be honest.
You mentioned the love of Tasmania and also Queenstown, but you mentioned how similar Canberra was to Tasmania and how much you love it here. Tell us what you love about the food scene here and the access to sort of local produce as well.
Well, the first thing about Canberra, look, you're an hour and a half from the snow, you're an hour and a half from the surf, you're 3 hours from Sydney, you're an hour and a half flight to Melbourne, mate. You couldn't have it any better. You got everything at your fingertips. And you'd know that, you live here. But Canberra's local, since I've been back for 5 years now, so almost 8 years all up in Canberra. But the markets that happen on the weekend here, as an example, there's 6 markets a weekend. It's just out of this world. The farmers market, I hadn't been in about 8 weeks, and I went a few weeks ago, and it's almost doubled in size. It's just, and for it to say, it's the size of a football field now. It's huge, and we're in Canberra. The amount of produce that grows around this area in 100-kilometre radius is just insane. Cheeses, meats, fruit and veg, beef, all of it. It's insane. People say you're in Canberra, you can't get fresh seafood. Oh, mate, we can get fresher than you can in Sydney, I swear, And the wine here out at Murray Bay and all that, it's just, Canberra's, give it a little while and Canberra it's becoming very, very popular. I think during the COVID time when you could only, just remotely travel around Australia, a lot of people were coming down to Canberra, and I think that really helped out our scene down here as well. A lot of Sydney people coming down here for the weekend.
Yeah, it definitely helped their understanding of what's going on in Canberra and the offerings, which are quite extraordinary, really.
Oh, absolutely.
You said something really beautifully honest earlier on about the need for really strong sous chefs, and that you didn't get that right originally and you'd learned the hard way with that. Tell us about that lesson that you learned and what happened.
Yeah, okay. Well, in my first stint here, before I left and, had a play around in Braddon, I had the junior sous chef to run the restaurant, and I didn't have a head chef or a senior chef, and they were great. Don't get me wrong. There's no malice here, but I found it very hard. I tried to take on. I was young. I was arrogant. I thought me. Life lessons learned, and I just kept on trying to push to do everything myself. Run the restaurant myself, run the hotel myself. I had a great sous chef and team up in banqueting that did a great job up there, but I was doing everything else and just trying to push it better. And I was young and I hadn't really found my place on a plate yet, and how to my style of cooking. And I was just trying everything, and I was getting super frustrated if I couldn't train someone, or they couldn't reenact what I wanted to do, or their vision wasn't the same as my vision. And it just got too much. And I walked into my general manager's office and I said, I need to quit or take 3 months off because I'm going to break right now. And I don't know what I'm going to break. If I break something or someone or what, I've come to you because I need to stop it. And she went, yep, good. Thank you for coming. And she goes, you're not quitting. You're not taking 3 months off. Take 5 weeks off and go home to Tassie. And that's what I did. And in that time, she went and hired me an incredible executive sous chef to run or a head chef, title doesn't really matter, to run the restaurant. And I came back and my life was 100% different, mate.
Well, tell us a little bit about, what you're doing there. Is there a couple of dishes or, things that you do there that exemplify your cooking that you can share?
Our meat program, I'm pretty proud of. We use a range of meats, West Home Wagyu, We push a lot of Cape Grim beef, like they're our bone-in sirloins, our bisteccas, our normal sirloin New York strip. They're probably my favourite, mate. Our pasta program too, we've only got 3 on, but I love this lasagna that we do where, we do about 40 layers in a gastro, bake it, set it overnight, press it, then cut it, pan fry, porcini bechamel, blowtorch, fresh pesto, that's fantastic. Tiramisu for dessert, you can't go wrong. Beautiful espresso, marsala, pepe say, mascarpone. It's just food that you want to eat at home on the couch, after a big day at work, or you can eat wherever. Just because you're in a nice restaurant here doesn't mean you can't eat it somewhere else. It's just food that makes you feel like homely, like comforting, comfort food sort of thing.
You've made a real success in the executive chef role now. What sort of advice would you have for young chefs out there that are looking to reach sort of where you're at?
You got to make sure you got a good team under you, and you got to make sure you got a good leader on top of you, because you can't be an exec chef without either of those. But you also have to give what you expect from other people. You can't. People think, exec chef, cool 9-to-5 job. It's not a 9-to-5 job. If anything, it's a 6 till 9 job. It's a big thing. It doesn't switch off. It doesn't turn off. It's not like a restaurant that just opens, Tuesday to Saturday from 5 till 11. It's nothing like any of that. It's 24/7 on the go. It'll never stop, and you have to be ready to take that on board and absorb that. And you have to be able to be positive with great leadership skills all the time. You can't really have a bad day. You can't really have this. You can't really have that. You have to always be switched on the ball, all over it at all time, and know what's going on in 6 different venues at once at the same time.
You mentioned that you've already implemented some changes, but do you have some sort of plans sort of for the next sort of year or two within the role?
Look, I just want to have great food, happy guests, a profitable restaurant, and a great team. And I want to have a huge team that have all got a great succession plan in front of them, and hopefully, make something out of all them as well. Every chef there can become something else, move on and grow. If I can do that, then that's my plan. That's what I'm happy for. We change the menus every season, which is fun, but bigger picture, profitable restaurant, happy chefs, happy customers, happy staff. That's the goal, mate. That's the goal. It's as simple as that.
Well, you've definitely delivered one of the best eating experiences in the capital. What do you love about what you do?
It's just food. It's a bit of an obsession, right? I don't know what it is. Everybody has their things. It's just a bit, it's just, yesterday my truffle farmer, Frank, he dropped me off a container of truffles and I opened them and it smacked me in the face like, bad BO or a heavy perfume or something. And I was like, whoa, like that, you don't get that. Where else would you get that, like a smell like that smacks you in the face and you enjoy so much? You can't get that as a mechanic or anything, it's food, it's always changing. It's never the same. We strive for perfection or whatever, but we're never going to get it. We just need to keep on, playing, experimenting, fermenting, foraging, all this stuff. And all the stuff that's coming out on TV about, how much the bear has done for the industry. I saw Renee Redzepi's doing a new omnivore TV show like that, like all this stuff that it never stops and it never will stop. It's just something that you just never stop learning about. And that's what you love. Because there's some things that when you learn it all, you've learned it. You can't learn anymore. But with cooking and food, you just don't stop. It never stops. And if you ever get sick of cooking, you become a farmer, you become a cheesemaker, you become a dairy, you become a butcher. You do something else and it's still food. It's still the industry,
Yep, I agree. Josh, it was an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today. Look forward to seeing where you take QT Canberra from here. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Huck. Appreciate it very much.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.